A full, complex human body begins as a single microscopic entity, a fertilized cell, the zygote. If we look inside that cell, or the trillions that follow, we find a consistent architecture. The outer border is the plasma membrane. Inside, specialized structures called organelles, like the DNA-housing nucleus and the energy-producing mitochondria, float in a watery fluid called the cytosol. That outer plasma membrane acts as a strict border control. It possesses a property called selective permeability, meaning it dictates exactly which molecules are allowed to pass into the cell and which are locked out. Every tissue, organ, and physiological system relies entirely on this microscopic structure and gatekeeping. Mastering the cell is the prerequisite for understanding everything from routine digestion to advanced medical treatments. This diagram shows the cell cycle. Most life is spent in the green interphase. Division happens in the pink M phase, mitosis. Look at the S phase wedge. Here, the cell actively replicates its DNA payload, preparing the blueprints for a second cell. Once the DNA is copied, mitosis begins. It progresses through 4 active stages: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. During these stages, internal cellular machinery physically grips the duplicated chromosomes and pulls them apart to opposite ends of the cell. Here is what that process actually looks like under a microscope. The thick, glowing pink clusters are the replicated chromosomes, or chromatids. The bright green networks are the mitotic spindles, the microscopic cables physically dragging those pink chromosomes apart. After the genetic material is fully separated, a final step called cytokinesis occurs. The plasma membrane itself pinches inward and splits, leaving 2 entirely distinct, genetically identical daughter cells. When this replication mechanism breaks down and mitosis proceeds without stop signals, the result is cancer. Before we move to the next system, a quick test. Do you remember which specific phase of the cycle duplicates the DNA? All of that microscopic cellular division requires a massive amount of metabolic energy. That energy production relies entirely on a continuous supply of oxygen, bringing us to the respiratory system. This diagram maps the physical route of air. When inhaled, oxygen travels down through the pharynx and larynx, into the trachea, and splits into the right and left lungs. Notice how the lungs are asymmetrical to make room for the heart sitting centrally between them. This illustration compares the mechanics of the lungs to a fist pressing into a fluid-filled balloon. Lungs are encased in a double-layered pleura. The narrow space between layers contains serous fluid, creating a vacuum that keeps lung tissue expanded tightly against the inner ribcage. Because the lung's expansion relies entirely on that vacuum, any puncture to the pleural cavity breaks the seal. Atmospheric air rushes into the chest, and the underlying lung immediately collapses, a life-threatening condition known as a pneumothorax. Normal resting breathing is a physical, mechanical process. The dome-shaped diaphragm muscle at the chest's base does 75% of the work. When it contracts downward, the thoracic cavity expands, dropping internal pressure and pulling fresh air in. Deep at the end of those branching airways sit millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli. The walls of these sacs are fused directly to the surrounding blood vessels. Together, they form the respiratory membrane, a structure so thin and vast that its total surface area is roughly the size of a tennis court. Looking at the top of this chart, gases move from high to low pressure. Oxygen diffuses into the capillary, while carbon dioxide flows out. Panning down, the cycle completes with internal respiration. Oxygen diffuses out of systemic capillaries into tissue cells to fuel metabolism. You don't have to consciously think to make this chemical exchange happen. Respiration is an ongoing, passive supply chain, driven entirely by invisible pressure gradients to keep billions of microscopic cells alive. Oxygen alone isn't enough to power the machine. Those cells require physical fuel. Extracting that fuel from your food is such an intense metabolic process that the liver, as it breaks down the incoming nutrients, acts as the primary heat-producing organ in the entire body. This anatomical view shows the tightly coiled small intestine, framed entirely by the large intestine. It consists of 3 continuous sections: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Within this winding tube, the chemical digestion of food finishes and nutrient absorption happens. In this cross-section, the intestinal wall is built to maximize absorption. Tiny finger-like villi contain capillary networks to capture nutrients. Panning down, the electron micrograph reveals the cells covering those villi have micromilli, creating a dense, textured brush border. By stacking folds on top of folds and microvilli on top of villi, the small intestine creates a massive surface area. This relentless architectural engineering ensures that nearly every usable nutrient molecule is stripped from your food and pushed directly into the bloodstream. This diagram highlights the hidden accessory organs that make that intestinal digestion possible. Tucked directly behind the stomach, outlined in white, is the pancreas. The pancreas plays two distinct roles. Its endocrine cells release hormones like insulin directly into the blood to regulate glucose. Meanwhile, its exocrine function pumps digestive enzymes and a highly alkaline, watery juice straight into the duodenum. Above the pancreas sits the liver, the body's heaviest internal gland and central metabolic powerhouse. One of its main jobs is synthesizing bile from the blood flowing through it. Bile flows from the liver through the hepatic duct into the gallbladder for storage. When the digestive system detects fat, the gallbladder contracts, squeezing stored bile down the common bile duct and into the duodenum. Bile isn't an enzyme itself. It acts more like a biological detergent. It emulsifies large fat globules, breaking them apart into far smaller droplets. This drastically increases the surface area of the fat, giving the pancreatic enzymes the physical access they need to break it down. Both this bile and the pancreatic juice share a crucial chemical trait. They are highly alkaline. Food arriving from the stomach is saturated in destructive gastric acid. These basic secretions immediately neutralize that acid, raising the pH to a safe level and protecting the delicate lining of the small intestine. We started with the single cell, moved through our lungs' pressure mechanics, and traced our fuel's chemical processing. The human body is an integrated machine where cellular architecture and fluid dynamics work together seamlessly. We'll explore the vast delivery networks that connect these systems in Part 2.